Good morning, everybody. Right, I've got another little job on the cards today. That's a little repair job on my daughter's Ford KA. Car has had a water leak ever since we've owned it. I thought I'd resolved it by putting a new temperature switch in there, which was part of the leak, but we subsequently found out it was still leaking from the actual thermostat housing. So we're about to sell this car, so we've got no choice but to finally get it sorted out. This is the complete thermostat housing with new thermostat fitted. The original problem that I noticed where the leak was coming from was this here. This is the temperature switch that would control your temperature gauge in the car. In there, all it is a rubber seal. You pull this little pin out here, and this just pulled out, and it's just a big thick rubber seal on there. Now that had corroded and it was leaking, so got that changed and thought, great, that's all done. But then we realised it was still losing water, not as much as it was, but definitely still losing it. And when I took this off, what I found was this rubber gasket, which actually sits in a recess into the plastic on the bottom here. It's distorted and you've actually got a big bulge up about the middle. This is £58 this part has cost. So to try and save spending that money on it, originally what I'd done was just used silicone sealer, gasket sealer around it in the hope that that would work, but unfortunately it didn't. Again, it slowed it down, but it didn't resolve the problem. In the old days, things like this, it was actually sort of special cardboard paper gaskets all these things were made of, so if you had problems with them leaking, all you had to do was peel it off, clean it up a bit and put a new one on. But unfortunately that's not the way they seem to be making them these days. So we're about to sell the car because my sister's selling a Fiesta that I actually own from brand new, so that'd be a good upgrade for my daughter, jumping up a little bit bigger from a KA to the Fiesta. And obviously, being a car I know the entire life history of, and know it's been serviced every year. First 2 or 3 years by Ford with it being a brand new car, and ever since then I've given it an oil change and various services over the years. So I definitely want to buy that one for my daughter. This part's not too complicated to change. You can get into it reasonably well. I think I remember right, I think the bottom 2 bolts are a little bit fiddly to get into, but apart from that, it's not too bad. You've got 3 bolts on the bottom, 3 bolts on the top. These are just small Allen key type bolts. So let's remove them. 3 water hoses on the top and 2 at the ends of it. So not too tricky. So I shall try, if I can manage to position the camera well enough to make a half reasonable video, I will try and video me doing it just for anyone who's got this job to do. I remember one of the other cars I went to see, the KA, before I bought this one. The guy had also said that one had a water leak that had just been fixed in the garage. So I don't know whether this is possibly a common problem on Ford KAs. So if it is, then this video could definitely be useful for someone. Right, that's it for now, guys. Airbox off first job, lads. Here's the part, as shown earlier. I'm wrong actually, I thought it was Allen bolts, but they're not, the normal nut heads, so a little bit simpler. So, a couple of clips on water pipes to come off. Same with all these up here. So, 3 little pipes, bigger pipe either end, and 6 bolts is all we're looking at. And this little plug on top of the temperature sensor. You just push in this general area, that little clip, and that'll release that. So that's not too bad. Probably not going to get a great view here, but I'll do the best I can. These clips you basically just get on either end of it, squeeze them together, they're just like a spring loaded clip, and just wiggle it off. Same sort of clips on these little pipes, squeeze them together, and off they come. Find these things a bit on the fiddly side. There we go. Just one clip down the bottom here now, but I'll see if I can unscrew it. try and loosen it off for the time being. So we're probably getting the most water out here now. A bit awkward down this one. Try and give them a bit of a twist if they're being a bastard to come off. Helps to just break the seal. Thankfully not too much water, but the tank was low anyway, so I purposely didn't top it up yesterday, knowing I was going to be doing this. These little nuts are 8mm for the record. So actually all of them nuts are simple enough to get into actually. I seem to remember one was hard, but maybe that was on the coil pack when I done that. In fact, it probably was thinking about it. That was awkward to get into. Always best if you can, when you're taking things like this off, if you can leave the nuts in until you lift it off. Try and keep them in place, because sometimes certain parts will have different length bolts. I think these were all the same, but in some cases you might whip all the bolts out and then sort of realise there's some various lengths. I've had that happen to me a couple of times. It's all fairly easy to get into, which on today's cars is always a bonus, because a tiny little job can be a mission now. You end up taking a ton of stuff off that's got nothing to do with the job you're doing, just to be able to get into it. Here comes the water. And miss one nut at the end there. Slackened off, just didn't take it all out. At least it's a nice day for it. You're alright with these bolts, they all look the same size actually, but I say it does happen on occasion. You can see some of the silicone stuff I put on it. Wrong, it's actually that corner the distortion is. I thought it was on the bottom, but you can see where that's all kind of come away. So well and truly knackered. Just the face of the engine that it bolts onto. So I'll switch you off for a bit. I'll just spend a bit of time cleaning this all up, make sure it's got a nice smooth surface to cop hold of. Right everybody, back again. All I've been doing is taking a bit of time to clean up around this area where the gasket's obviously going to seal. I used a window blade to get the worst of the rust off, and then a little bit of wet and dry with a bit of water on it. When you're doing that, you've got to be careful not to go too crazy on it, because obviously if you put any deep scores into this surface, then potentially that's going to be a leak. Now, got one little thing of concern on here, just there. There's a slight imperfection. There's actually just a tiny little ridge there of corrosion. So a little bit concerned about that now. What I'm going to do is put just a tiny little smear of that instant gasket sealer on there to just help fill that little void. So that's a little point of concern I've got, but hopefully it will not be a big problem. So just a case of reassembling now. Obviously just a reverse process of taking it apart, so you can skip to the end now if you want, but if you want to watch it being reassembled, then I'll keep the film running. So it'll be put it back together, and then obviously top the water up with a bit of fresh antifreeze.